This is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.
In the headlines, Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky is slamming the idea of Moscow peace talks, telling world leaders in Paris that Russia should stop floating empty invitations. A sweeping new tariff order from Washington has forced South Korea to halt parcel deliveries to the U.S., sending costs soaring for families and squeezing Korea's booming e-commerce industry. At least one person is dead and several more wounded after an Israeli airstrike hit southern Lebanon. The strike targeted a facility in Ansariye, sparking fires and chaos on the ground. China and Russia are rolling out a reciprocal visa-free travel policy, cementing their growing ties and opening the door for more tourism and trade. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the women displaced by ADF rebel attacks say they're being driven into dangerous mining work just to survive. The White House is vowing to fight a court order restoring billions in research grants for Harvard University. The fashion world is in mourning. Legendary designer Giorgio Armani has died at the age of 91, leaving behind a global empire and timeless legacy. And in sports, Filipina tennis star Alex Eala storms into the semifinals of the Guadalajara Open in Mexico after overpowering Italian rival Nicole Fossa-Huergo. I'm Fatima Nawzil. Newsline World starts now. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky is throwing cold water on the idea of traveling to Moscow for peace talks. His remarks came in Paris alongside French President Emmanuel Macron as Russia continues to float the possibility of a summit. Franco Baranda reports.
Facing reporters after a coalition of the willing meeting in Paris, France, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was asked whether he would meet with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin and where such talks might take place. To this, Zelensky criticized Putin's invitation to Moscow.
Що стосується зустрічі. Зустріч потрібна. Це не про бажання, а це потрібно. Ми підтримували в будь-якому форматі і трьохсторонню зустріч, і двосторонню. Я вважаю, що Росія робить все, щоб відтермінувати. Американські партнери нам передали, що Путін запросив мене в Москву. Я вважаю, що, знаєте, як коли хочеш, щоб зустрічі не було, то треба запросити мене в Москву. Тому я думаю, що Росія почала говорити про зустріч. Це вже непогано, але поки що ми не бачимо їх бажання закінчення війни. А зустрічі, я вважаю, дорослі лідери з зустрічі такого рівня повинні виходити з якимось результатом. Бажано закінчення війни.
Both leaders also faced questions over Western security guarantees for Kiev. French President Emmanuel Macron, for his part, refused to disclose details. The remarks come a day after Vladimir Putin said he never rejected a summit if it is properly prepared.
After all, if Zelensky is ready, he can come to Moscow.
The Russian president added that U.S. President Donald Trump had urged him to host Zelensky in Moscow. Trump has previously argued that only a direct bilateral meeting between the Russian and Ukrainian presidents can move the peace process forward. But for now, Putin and Zelensky remain far apart, not just on terms for ending the conflict, but even on where they could sit down face to face. Reporting for Newsline World, Franco Baranda, SMNI News.
Meanwhile, Indonesia and the United States have just concluded their largest ever joint military drills known as Super Garuda Shield 2025, bringing together thousands of troops from across the Indo-Pacific amid rising tensions in the region. This report. Across multiple training grounds in Indonesia, thousands of troops participated in the annual drill exercise, which has become the biggest Super Garuda Shield exercise to date. Super Garuda Shield, which ran from August 25 to September 4, has grown steadily since its inception. This year, nearly 6,500 troops gathered for the Super Garuda Shield. The drills featured live fire demonstrations, long-range missile and artillery strikes, as well as coordinated ground and air operations. Hosted by Indonesia's National Armed Forces, this year's drills emphasize interoperability with allies and partners. Indonesian Military Chief Subianto praised his troops for working seamlessly alongside foreign forces in confronting shared threats. The United States and Indonesia said the exercise reflects a stronger defense partnership, with Washington stressing the importance of regional security in the Indo-Pacific. Global oil markets are bracing for fresh turbulence. OPEC and its allies, known as OPEC Plus, may boost production again in October, a move already dragging prices down. The world's biggest oil producers are once again weighing a production increase. According to Reuters, 8 OPEC Plus members will meet on Sunday to discuss raising output in October. The group is trying to claw back market share as demand softens. West Texas Intermediate crude for October deliveries slipped to just under $64 a barrel in New York. Brent for November dropped to $67.60 in London trading. Last month, OPEC Plus agreed to pump an extra 547,000 barrels per day in September. But analysts warn that few producers have spare capacity left. Industry insiders say only Saudi Arabia can significantly increase supply. The UAE and Kuwait may add small amounts. Adding to the pressure, non-OPEC producers, including the United States and Guyana, are also set to ramp up production in the fourth quarter, raising the risk of a global oil glut. For consumers, lower prices at the pump could bring short-term relief, but for oil producers, it's a race to protect revenue in an already volatile market. Displaced women in the Democratic Republic of the Congo say they are being forced into heavy and low-paying labor in artisanal mines after escaping attacks by the Allied Democratic Forces. Justin Nazario has a story.
In Giapanda and nearby communities, women can be seen transporting sacks of rocks and sand for meager wages. Judith Sulua, who fled from Midiedes, said their displacement left them with no alternative.
Sie kwanza ni mambo ya huruma sana. Ujua tumekia fika hapa ni juu ya EDF. EDF wenyewe wametutendea kutoka kule. Hatujuka balitokeaka na wapi. Njo inaacha tunakia patikania hapa Mangurujipa na hapa Mushantie Pangoi.
Another woman, Anita Jibu from Umbrella, explained how little they earn from the exhausting work.
Sisi tunapokea tuma ngizi tulikuwa nabeba pale tuko nabeba tuma 10,000. Mwisho tuenjoy ile papa. Osi tukizia hapa tushachoka. Asufianzi 1000. Unakuluka na ile. Sasa unaenda chunguza kama usikaze tena kesho yake. Na watoto na wezi kulia tade shuni. Huko na watoto seti kwa nyonyori bazaraka sasa na wachukulu baisha ingia hapo. Kitu nateseka ndio sana. Hey.
According to MONUSCO, ADF fighters linked to ISIS killed more than 52 civilians in Beni and Libera territories between August 9 and 16. Separately, the DRC government and M23 rebels signed a Qatar-mediated declaration of principles in July, committing to a permanent ceasefire. Both parties have since accused one another of violating the agreement. This is Justin Nazario, your citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
Up next, after the break, at least one person is dead and several more wounded after an Israeli airstrike hit southern Lebanon. The strike targeted a facility in Ansarieh, sparking fires and chaos on the ground. China and Russia are rolling out a reciprocal visa-free travel policy, cementing their growing ties and opening the door for more tourism and trade. More news after the break.
In 2005, Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy founded the Sunshine Philippines movement. A mission rooted in love for nature and nation. It began as an environmental and humanitarian initiative to reforest Mount Apo. Once barren, now a thriving and beautiful place. Through his initiative, thousands of trees have been planted across the Philippines, bringing life and hope to communities. His advocacy, One Tree, One Nation, is also a movement that calls for unity in preserving the environment. Because every tree planted is a step towards unity, healing, and a greater future. Join One Tree, One Nation.
Children will grow up and bring the joy, the love, the peace, and compassion to the whole world. We only have one planet. We only have one Earth. And I hope that this new generation of children that we have reached out will become millions and billions and bring peace on Earth. Bring peace to humanity.
An Australian social media influencer has sparked outrage in Japan after filming himself drinking from an offering left at a cemetery. The stunt has now triggered a warning from Australia's embassy in Tokyo. Ivy Astilio for more details.
What began as so-called prank has turned into international outrage. Australian tourist and streamer Lochie Jones posted a video of himself flipping a coin, then drinking from a can left at a Japanese gravesite, an offering meant for ancestors. It's the latest incident of foreign visitors clashing with Japanese tradition, underscoring the cultural sensitivities travelers can't afford to ignore. Jones' action received swift condemnation from Japanese users who called the stunt deeply disrespectful. The Australian embassy in Tokyo has since issued a reminder urging travelers to show appropriate behavior while visiting Japan. While it did not name Jones, the reminder stressed that Australians must respect local laws and customs. The influencer has since posted 2 apology videos on Instagram, though critics online say the damage is already done. This is Ivy Astilio, your global citizen correspondent, reporting from Newsline World.
At the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok, Russian President Vladimir Putin made a bold claim about his country's energy future, saying Russia's coal reserves could last nearly a millennium, but he also acknowledged major gaps in the nation's infrastructure. Speaking before delegates at the Eastern Economic Forum, President Vladimir Putin pointed to coal as one of Russia's greatest untapped strengths. Let's hear the rest of what he said.
Ситуация с энергетикой решается, но есть много вопросов, которые требуют особого внимания. Ну, например, у нас намечается дефицит газа, у нас нет соединения между различными компонентами энергетической инфраструктуры, у нас требует развития сетевое хозяйство, и в то же время есть достаточно большое количество угля различного класса, которого, я не знаю, чуть ли не на 1000 лет хватит, на 900 лет хватит всех запасов угля, которые, безусловно, можно гораздо эффективнее, наверное, использовать с большей отдачей и при соблюдении всех экологических требований и использовать как базовый первичный энергетический ресурс.
For Putin, the message was clear. Russia's energy wealth, particularly coal, remains vast and, in his words, could power Russia for centuries to come. Meanwhile, China has announced a sweeping new visa-free entry policy for Russian citizens, with Moscow swiftly pledging to match the move. It's the latest sign of deepening ties between the two neighbors and a potential boost to tourism and trade. Erica Rio will give us more details.
China is opening its doors wider to Russian visitors. Beginning September 15, Moscow passport holders can enter visa-free for up to 30 days. This means ordinary Russian passport holders will no longer need a visa to enter China. The one-year trial program will cover tourism, business, and family visits.
在两国元首战略引领下，中俄关系保持高水平运行。中方高度重视两国人员往来便利化问题，支持两国民众加强交往，为推动中俄新时代全面战略协作伙伴关系做出积极贡献。我们欢迎更多的俄罗斯朋友多来中国，常来中国。
Moscow quickly welcomed the decision. Meeting Chinese officials in Vladivostok, President Vladimir Putin called it a very significant step and vowed that Russia would respond in kind. For years, only organized tourist groups could travel visa-free between Moscow and Beijing. The new policy now extends to individual travelers. Chinese booking platforms save flight tickets, and hotel searches surged within hours of Beijing's announcement, with inquiries multiplying up to 9-fold. In 2024, nearly 3 million Russian tourists visited China. Officials expect those numbers to soar under the new visa-free system, as both governments frame the policy as part of a broader strategic partnership for a new era. Erica Rio, your citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
At least one person was dead and several others were injured when an Israeli airstrike hit the village of Ansariye in southern Lebanon recently. The raid struck a bulldozer maintenance facility, killing a Syrian national and wounding others. Emergency crews responded as smoke and fire rose from the site. The Israeli military denied hitting civilian infrastructure, saying the strike targeted a Hezbollah facility storing and engineering equipment for reconstruction and terrorist plans. Israel has conducted several raids in Lebanon since its November 27 ceasefire agreement with Hezbollah, with both sides accusing each other of violations. Coming up, a sweeping new tariff order from Washington has forced South Korea to halt parcel deliveries to the U.S., sending costs soaring for families and squeezing Korea's booming e-commerce industry. The White House is vowing to fight a court order restoring billions in research grants for Harvard University. More news after the break.
Madalas ka bang napapasobra sa pag-scroll sa phone mo kahit puro masasamang balita ang nakikita mo? Isipin mo ito. Nakahiga ka na sa kama, nagche-check lang ng phone bago matulog. Tapos, hindi mo na malayan, ilang oras ka na palang nagbabasa at nanonood ng mga balita tungkol sa digmaan, sakuna, politika at lahat ng masasamang nangyayari sa mundo. Nakakaramdam ka na ng kaba at pagod, pero tuloy mo pa rin ang scroll mo. Ang tawag dyan ay doom scrolling. Ito ang habit ng paulit-ulit na pagtingin sa mga negatibo o nakaka-depress na content tulad ng digmaan, krimen o problema sa mundo. Nakaka-stress pero hindi mo pa rin mapigilan. Ayon sa isang pag-aaral ng Texas Tech University, ang sobrang konsumo ng masasamang balita ay nauugnay sa pagtaas ng stress, anxiety at pisikal na sintomas gaya ng pagkapagod at sakit ng ulo. Ayon naman sa Harvard Health, ang doom scrolling ay nagpapataas ng fight or flight hormones tulad ng cortisol at adrenaline na nakakapagpabigat ng isip at katawan. Nakakaapekto ito sa iyong mood, tulog at maging sa mental at physical health mo. At kapag naman puro memes at random na content ang pinapanood mo ng sunod-sunod hanggang sa mawalan ka na ng gana na mag-isip at gumawa ng iba pang gawain, ang tawag naman diyan ay brain rot. Sa Gen Z at tinatawag na internet culture, ang brain rot ay overconsumption o sobrang tagal na panonood ng paulit-ulit, mababaw, magulo o walang saysay na content online hanggang sa parang manhid na ang utak mo. Kapag nasobrahan, syempre, nakakasama. Nawawalan ka na ng focus, nawawala ang motivation, hirap mag-isip ng malalim, parang lutang o foggy ang utak. Masaya sa simula, pero kapag sobra, napapagod ang isip mo. Nahihirapang mag-concentrate at parang lutang. Mas delikado pa ito sa mga bata dahil ang utak nila ay nasa proseso pa ng pag-develop. Kaya mas malakas ang epekto ng doom scrolling at brain rot sa kanila. Maaaring makaapekto sa pag-aaral, pag-iisip at pakikitungo sa iba. Ang higit sa 4 na oras ng screen time araw-araw sa mga kabataan ay konektado sa 35 to 88% na mas mataas na posibilidad ng depresyon, anxiety at stress. Base ito sa isang malawakang pag-aaral sa Brazil. Kaya, maging balanse. Magpahinga sa screen, magbasa, makipagkwentuhan, magdasal, maging present lagi. Alagaan ang iyong isipan. Kung anong itinatanim sa isipan mo, yun ang lalago.
A social media activist is warning of what he calls government misdirection on the flood control controversy. At the same time, a retired general is urging police investigators to take action against those involved. MJ Mondihar with the report.
That was the scene on Thursday morning, September 4, outside the gates of St. Gerard Constructions in Pasig City. The construction company's owner was pelted with mud and called a thief by a group identifying itself as a disaster environment watchdog. They were looking for St. Gerard's owner, Sara Diskaya, who had recently appeared in a Senate probe on the alleged flood control anomalies. But according to social media activist Mark Lopez, public outrage is being misdirected.
Doon ako medyo MJ, doon ako medyo na gulat na parang teka, bakit parang yung Philippine state-controlled media ang nagpapakalat ng ganyang balita.
Lopez insisted that the issue is being used to pin the blame solely on contractors.
Doon dinadala ang atensyon ng taong bayan na ito lang mga kontraktor ang pinag-iinitan. Kasi itong mga kontraktor na to, yes, may kasalanan yung mga yan, may mga yan, may pananagutan talaga yan. Kailangan nila talagang humarap din sa batas, Pero sa akin, actually sila ang least guilty.
For Lopez, government accomplices are the ones who should be held accountable, calling them the real plunderers and masterminds of corruption and flood control.
Dapat ang pagtuunan natin ng pansin, sino ba sa gobyerno, sino ba talaga ang may sala dito o sino talaga ang mga mastermind nito dahil hindi ito gawain lang ng mga kontrakto.
Retired Air Force General Romeo Poque says it's not Congress but the Philippine National Police Criminal Investigation and Detection Group or the PNP-CIDG that should take the lead. He stresses that if the Marcos administration is serious about seeking justice, authorities must move without delay, conduct non-stop investigations and file charges. He also urged judges to immediately issue arrest warrants against those involved. Poquis also warned that the Philippines could face arrest similar to Indonesia, where mass protests have erupted over corruption. In the end, critics said that what the public should see is accountability in a flood control controversy and other government anomalies, and not to shift the blame to the previous Duterte administration just to divert the issue.
Pero bakit wala tayong nadidinig na kung sino bang mga congressman, sino ba talaga ang mga other government officials, executive, ang may pakana nito? Ang malukot pa nga dito, MJ, alam yung playbook ngayon, ipapasa pa yata ito sa dating administrasyon.
For Guadalajara of Philippines, MJ Mondihar, SM9 News.
A sweeping tariff change from Washington has forced South Korea to suspend parcel deliveries to the United States. The move is already driving up costs for families and squeezing Korea's e-commerce sector. Kim Song has more.
South Korea has suspended parcel deliveries to the United States, a sudden move triggered by Washington's decision to end duty-free exemptions for low-cost imports. For the first time in years, South Koreans can send a regular parcel to the United States. The suspension took effect after a new order from U.S. President Donald Trump ending duty-free exemptions for low-cost imports valued at $800 or less. That includes a blanket 15% tariff on almost all incoming packages, except letters and documents. At Seoul's busy Gwanghwamun Post Office, a stark notice greets customers. No normal parcels or international express mail can be sent to America until further notice. While express mail service and private couriers remain available, they cost up to 20% more than regular shipping and now face tariffs on top. The fallout is especially severe for South Korea's booming cross-border e-commerce industry. Korean beauty and fashion retailers, popular with U.S. consumers, say the new tariffs will make their products less competitive. Smaller brands selling items priced around $15 to $20 each warn they may not survive in the American market. Korea Post say it is working with U.S.-approved customs firms to restore services within 2 months. However, analysts warn the long-term impact could be felt most by small and medium-sized businesses, already struggling to absorb rising costs. This is Kim Sung, your global citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
Prosecutors in Mar del Plata have charged Patricia Cadien and her husband Juan Carlos Cortegoso with aggravated concealment after surrendering an 18th century portrait stolen during World War II. The painting portrait of a lady by Italian Baroque master Giuseppe Ghislandi vanished for nearly 80 years before being found in Cadien's home. Investigators suspect her father, Friedrich Cadien, a known Nazi financier, smuggled the work into Argentina after the war. Authorities seized additional 19th century artworks in recent raids, which are now under expert examination to determine if they were also looted. The couple has been ordered to surrender their passports, establish residents and are barred from leaving the country for 6 months. The FBI is coordinating with Argentine prosecutors to provide documentation on the ownership of the artworks.
Donde se tuvo por formalizada la presente investigación en torno al delito de encubrimiento agravado. Las partes, los imputados decidieron de momento no hacer ningún tipo de manifestación y también se dispusieron una serie de medidas cautelares, principalmente entrega de pasaportes, fijación de domicilio y prohibición de salida del país.
Meanwhile, the White House will appeal a judge's ruling ordering the federal government to restore billions of dollars in research funding for Harvard. Daniela Paulita for the story.
A showdown over Harvard's research money. The White House will fight a federal judge order to restore more than $2.6 billion in funding. The Trump administration is set to appeal a judge decision that directed the federal government to reinstate the money in research funds for Harvard University, after U.S. District Judge Alison D. Burroughs declared the funding freeze unconstitutional. White House spokesperson Liz Houston immediately released a statement saying Harvard lost its funding after refusing the administration's demands to change its policies and governance, and for failing to protect its students from harassment and discrimination. She further stressed that Harvard has no constitutional right to receive taxpayer money if it can keep students safe. And this isn't the first clash. President Donald Trump previously criticized Judge Burroughs, calling her an activist judge appointed during the Obama administration. Houston, meanwhile, claims Burroughs would always side with Harvard despite its alleged failures. Reporting for Newsline World, Daniela Paulita, SMNI News.
Coming up, the fashion world is in mourning. Legendary designer Giorgio Armani has died at the age of 91, leaving behind a global empire and timeless legacy. And in sports, Filipino tennis star Alex Eala storms into the semifinals of the Guadalajara Open in Mexico after overpowering Italian rival Nicole Fossa Virgo. Newsline World will be back.
In 2005, Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy founded the Sunshine Philippines movement. A mission rooted in love for nature and nation. It began as an environmental and humanitarian initiative to reforest Mount Apo, once barren, now a thriving and beautiful place. Through his initiative, thousands of trees have been planted across the Philippines, bringing life and hope to communities. His advocacy, One Tree, One Nation, is also a movement that calls for unity in preserving the environment. Because every tree planted is a step towards unity, healing, and a greater future. Join One Tree, One Nation.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Ecuadorian President Daniel Noboa at the Carondelet Palace as both nations highlighted growing cooperation on security, trade, and migration. Jane Cagnita tells us more.
Rubio arrived in Quito, walking down the red carpet at the presidential palace, greeting guards and saluting the Ecuadorian flag before meeting Noboa. The two shook hands, posed for photos alongside Foreign Minister Gabriela Sommerfeld, and sat down for talks with cabinet members. The Ecuadorian Foreign Ministry said discussions would center on security and fight against transnational crime, migration, and economic cooperation. Ecuador and the United States allies for security, the ministry declared in a statement on social media. Relations between the two countries have deepened in recent years, with joint military agreements signed in 2023 and 2024, trade volume reaching $16 billion in 2024, and Ecuador extraditing criminal leader Fito to the U.S. earlier this year, the first such case in history. This has been Jane Conita, your global citizen correspondent for Newsline World.
The fashion world is in mourning after legendary designer and billionaire Giorgio Armani passed away at the age of 91. His Armani group confirmed he died peacefully surrounded by family. Born in 1934, Armani launched his namesake brand in 1975 and went on to redefine global fashion. Credited with inventing the red carpet look, his influence extended far beyond clothing, shaping beauty, fragrance, sports, and even real estate under his empire. Fans and admirers in Milan paid tribute to the designer.
Impreparata perché è una mancanza gravissima per l'Italia, per il mondo, soprattutto per la persona che era Giorgio anche a livello umano, oltre che professionale, insomma, il marchio nel mondo. Mi cogliete un po'?
Per me è la base del mio modo di vestirmi, perché mi sono sempre servita da lui fin da ragazzina. E questa assenza, che spero non sarà assenza, ma ci sarà qualcuno che continuerà al suo posto, ma è molto doloroso. Per ora posso dire che mi ha addolorato profondamente.
Tourists also joined in remembrance, reflecting on Armani's lasting impact on fashion.
We just learned the devastating news and quite sad, and we're thinking about him and his family and the impact that he's had on the design world, and all the designers who have been influenced by him over the years, that will carry on his tradition.
A legacy for all times, all future ahead for design. Armani will be the legend of fashion and design.
With a career spanning nearly 5 decades, Armani leaves behind not only a global brand but also a legacy that shaped the very meaning of style. And for a sports update, Filipina tennis Alex Eala advanced to the semifinals of the Guadalajara 125 Open in Mexico after defeating Italy's Nicole Fossa Virgo. And on the boxing ring, legends Floyd Mayweather and Mike Tyson is set to clash in exhibition fight next year. Let's find out more from Carlo de la Peña.
Eala, coming off a rain-delayed round of 16 win over Varvara Lepchenko, displayed grit and composure to extend her campaign as she inches closer to a WTA Finals return since Eastbourne last June. The 20-year-old found herself trailing 1-4 in the first set, but clawed back, winning 5 of the next 6 games for a 6-5 edge. Although Fossa Virgo forced a tie-break, Eala stayed composed and clinched the opener after 57 minutes of play. In the second set, with the score tied at 2-all, Eala broke serve in the 5th game and never looked back. She strung together 3 straight games to seal the straight sets victory. Next, Eala faces American Kyla Day, who earlier stunned 3rd seed Emiliana Arango of Colombia 7-5-6-2 in their own quarterfinal match. Meanwhile, boxing icons Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Mike Tyson will face off in an exhibition bout next spring. The event will be staged by CSI Sports/Fight Sports, with the official date and venue to be revealed soon. Tyson, with 50 wins and 7 losses and 44 knockouts, has not won a professional fight since 2003 and most recently lost to Jake Paul in November 2024. The exhibition will not be added to his record. Mayweather, unbeaten at 50-0, retired in 2017 after defeating Conor McGregor. Since then, he has competed in 4 exhibition matches, winning 3 and drawing 1. Both fighters promised fans a spectacle, while organizers said a global promotion campaign and world-class venue are in the works. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Carlo de la Peña bringing you the latest sports news.
Chilean swimmer Barbara Hernandez set her 4th Guinness World Record after completing a 3.84-kilometer swim in the Signoret Channel in Puerto Natales, the longest ice water swim ever achieved by a woman. Naomi Perez for the story.
Known as the Ice Mermaid, Hernandez finished the challenge in 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 15 seconds, surpassing the 3.54-kilometer record set in March by Poland's Isabela Babica. The swim began at 9:44 a.m. local time in freezing conditions. Hernandez's body temperature dropped to 31 degrees Celsius by the time she exited the water, showing signs of hypothermia.
Nos acaban de confirmar nuestro cuarto récord Guinness, la distancia más extensa nadada por una mujer en el mundo, y es chilena. Es esta sirena de hielo gracias a ustedes acá en Puerto Natales, así que muchísimas gracias a todo el equipo que lo hizo posible. Los queremos muchísimo, estamos muy agradecidos con uno de mis auspiciadores y por supuesto a mi familia y a este tremendo Ice Team que lo dio todo para hacer esto posible. Así que 3.840 metros nadados a 4.5 grados Celsius en aguas realmente gélidas y tenemos nuestro cuarto récord Guinness. Official amazing!
Hernandez already holds 3 world records, including the fastest ice mile and longest distance at Cape Horn in 2022, and 2 records in Antarctica in 2023 for the longest polar swim and for being the only woman to complete a 2.5-kilometer swim there. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Naomi Perez, SMNI News.
What began as an ordinary drive near West Point turned into a life-saving mission when Army football player and his father pulled a man from a crashed car moments before it burst into flame. Charlene Lanillo for Good News.
The dramatic rescue happened early Sunday on Route 9W in Fort Montgomery, New York, just 4 miles from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. Video captured by Pickett's Jr.'s sister showed the sophomore's safety and his father, Larry Pickett Sr., rushing toward a smoking sedan that had slammed into a utility pole. With the sparkling wires dangling nearby and the vehicle seconds away from igniting, the father and son duo sprang into action. They unbuckled the trapped driver, pulled him from the car and carried him to safety. Pickett said they knew that the car was about to catch on fire and whoever was in there was going to burn up, and we couldn't just watch and let that happen. The U.S. Military Academy publicly praised their heroic actions, with athletic director Tom Theodorakis noting that their bravery embodied the values of leadership, courage, and selfless service that West Point strives to instill. For the Picketts, what mattered most was saving a life. For West Point and the wider community, their actions serve as a shining example of how instinct, teamwork, and courage can turn an ordinary day into a story of heroism. Charlene Lanillo, your citizen correspondent, reporting for God in my beloved Philippines.
And before we end, may you be inspired with the words of the Psalm. If your voice held no power, they would not try to silence you. And as we keep track of our Christmas countdown, there's only 111 days left before Christmas. And that's all for this edition of Newsline World for God and my beloved country, the Philippines. I'm Fatima Nawzil. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
This is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.